Hello everyone, welcome back. This is History with Hilbert, and as you can see, today I'm at sea. And the thing is, well, today I'm going to be making a video about sea, and the sea in the past, so the sea in history. Because I was out on the sea again today, from my holiday in the Netherlands back to the northeast of England, and last night I was thinking about some things while I was out on deck and it was nighttime. Because when it's nighttime, you really appreciate how busy the sea is. I mean, this is, I don't know, it's sort of the channel, it's the bit between the Netherlands and England, and we were crossing over there, so that's, you'd think, well, that's pretty, open sea for quite a long, way. But there were so many ships out there were so many lights, and that really made me think about the sea in history. And we've got to remember that we often think today, the sea is very wide, is very open, very empty. But in actual fact, in history, and especially in the sort of era that I like to cover on this channel, which some call the Dark Ages, the early Middle Ages, that kind of thing, they were really busy. And the reason was because with the Romans, when they left, their whole infrastructure disappeared because they'd built roads. But with all the fighting going on, what would the local chieftain do? Well, they'd get the bricks from the road to help build their fortress, and these roads would deteriorate. And as well, when these roads were damaged, no one would repair them because A, no one really knew how to, and B, why would you when you've got bigger fish to fry, as in the other tribe or the Huns that are coming in or whatever, then you've got to defend against them. So this whole road system that the Romans built up in Europe, pretty much, well, you can still see it in places, but it's ceased being effective. And even if you could travel across these Roman roads, well, then you'd be attacked by bandits because it was very dangerous, terrain to be on. Because these bandits, they'd be everywhere and it was very lawless. So instead, and this did happen in the Roman era as well, don't get me wrong, but a lot more travel started to happen by sea. And this is when my favourite people come in, the Frisians. Because the Frisians, they were really the ones who were very famous for this. In fact, the word Frisian, post the, say, 10th, 11th centuries, Frisian starts to become synonymous with trader. So it didn't matter if you were actually a Frisian. Well, it only mattered if you were trading long distance across the sea. Then you would be called a Frisian. And it's really the Frisians, they lived in, obviously, Frisia, and this would flood all the time. So they would sit on their terraps, and what they would do is they'd make things there. So like, they'd have sheep, they keep sheep, and then they'd get wool, and then they'd make the wool very fine by working with it and processing it, and then dyeing it, and then they'd sell this in, probably sail down the Rhine first, and they'd sell this, and then maybe they'd buy some wine, and then they'd come out here on the North Sea, and from the North Sea they could go over there, which is the coast of England in the distance, by the way, or they would go to Scandinavia, and there they would sell the wine. And so they became, well, rich, and they pretty much wrote themselves into our history books by crossing this sea. But you've got to sometimes think, how big were their balls if they went onto the sea? And quite often, you hear about the Frisians, they weren't massive cruise ships. So like, I'm on this kind of ship, it's all made of iron, it's got, I don't know what they are, the trail thing, yeah, they've got the engines, there we go, I've been speaking Dutch for 2 weeks so my English might not be the best, they've got engines, it's all made of iron, you've got safety protection stuff, there's a lifeboat, in case everything does go balls up. But these Frisians and the Dark Ages people who cross the sea, they'd have none of this. Their boats would be made of wood. They'd be really small. The crews would be very small as well. I think something like 3 or 4 people, depending on the ship though, because there were different types of ship. But they would be very small, and a lot of them didn't actually have any shelter, so they'd just be open boats. And it's true that they would only go out in good weather. But if you're making a trip to, say, Hilbert, which is it's in Denmark, well, you're not going to be there by the time that the weather's still good. The weather could easily change, and then it's gone. And as well, that's the Dark Ages. And then obviously later you've got the, the people we now call the Vikings, who come over, and they obviously cross this sea, the North Sea, but also the Atlantic, so that's a whole other kettle of fish. The North Sea can be pretty rough, but it's nothing compared to the Atlantic, which is really wide, open sea. But if we think back then to maybe even before the Dark Ages, to prehistory. Now in that show that I was watching and I recommended, I said you should watch The Secrets of Orkney. And on there they actually said that they think the first inhabitants to come to Orkney came by boat. And this would have been the prehistoric era. So I'm not sure, I think something like 4000 BC is what they were saying, I can't remember exactly. And they were saying from analysis of, I think it was the voles on the island, that the voles initially came from, all their DNA looked most similar to voles found in Belgium, which suggests that the voles on Orkney were brought over by some of the first people to come over, because obviously voles, they can get into the ships, they can hide in a corner, and then you can take them to another country, another continent. And if that's true, that would mean that people went from Belgium to Orkney. And again, from what they know about the boats that they built, or even could have built with the technology, these would have been little more than canoes. So imagine trying to cross, I mean it's not very choppy at all today, but imagine trying to cross this sea with your whole tribe in a canoe from Belgium to Orkney. It's just absolutely incredible. And that's just, you know, this part of the world, the North Sea, Europe. But if you think about the wider sort of area of where they went in ships, obviously pretty much every culture has built ships. You know, in North America, the Native Americans of the northwest coast, they built long canoes, war canoes, and they hunted whales in them. But if you think of, you know, the Pacific Islands, everyone on there got there by ship. Australia as well, the Aboriginals. Now there's people called the Polynesians, you know, they travelled everywhere by ship, and that's how they you know, populated all of these islands there. And they must have crossed huge seas as well, if you think about where they all are. And we tend to think of these peoples in the South Pacific, you know, that area where we've got sort of the Maori and things, as being very ancient and having been there for ages. But actually, the Maori, I think they only started arriving in New Zealand in about 1400 or 1500. You know, so it's been a very long process, because obviously, well, there'd be some expeditions to try and find new lands from wherever they set out. But I think they're related to the people on Hawaii, they're sort of that sort of race. But then there would have been some expeditions, but many would have failed. Because that's what we also don't appreciate, is how many people died at sea. Now even at the beginning of the last century, so the 1900s, in the Netherlands, in the harbours, you can still see these wooden fishing boats, botters they're called in Dutch. And these are essentially just the same types of ships that the Frisians of the Dark Ages would have sailed across this sea. And a lot of them, you know, there were the fishing fleets of Hilbert, for example. Now there are hardly any fishing fleets left in the Netherlands, because the Zuiderzee, which is the big sort of inland sea, that was cut off by the Afsluitdijk, by this huge dike that they built across from North Holland to Friesland. So that, you know, you can't fish as much because you can't get out to the North Sea. So all of these towns on the inland sea, you couldn't get to see people, so they don't do much fishing. But when they did, you know, it was very much a thing that these fishers could expect not to come home, because they were essentially just going out in wooden fishing boats and fishing, so it was very much a likelihood that they would die at sea. And that's why we see that even in the old Frisian times, I think it was in Birka in Sweden, there was a Frisian trading post, and that there they actually had the sort of earlier type of, I believe they called a kildar. And this kildar, what it essentially did was it acted like a fish, so that if a man did die at sea, if a fisher was across the sea, or a trader, sorry, was across the sea, then the other guild members, they would look after the family of the, you know, the widow and the children of the trader, because that was the risk. It was like a life insurance for your family, because there was a huge risk. I thought I just knocked someone over, but it was a table. That's all right. But there was a huge risk of dying at sea. So yeah, I had these thoughts last night, and I thought it would be an interesting video. I know I've been a bit boring and maybe it's a bit hard to understand with the wind, but yeah. So I just wanted to share these thoughts about the sea. thanks very much for watching. This is History with Hilbert, and I'll be returning to you on land again very soon.